Hi, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us for this self-directed IRA Saturday. My name is Zach Wilson. I'm one of the IRA specialists here at Quest Trust Company. So today we got an important topic to cover because I feel as we move forward with their fluctuations both in the real estate market and in the overall public market, it's important to understand your plan for your portfolio and your own retirement planning, right? So when you're doing so, you want to be sure you're gathering as much information as possible. And that's why I think sessions like today, right, classes like today are crucial to making sure you're prepared for your future. Today, we've got Casey Gregerson. And so Casey's a serial entrepreneur ranging from real estate to the sport and fitness industries. So after buying his first property while in college over 10 years ago, he's gone on to develop an integrated real estate business in multiple regions across the United States. So he's now sharing his knowledge and experience as a real estate investor and a business owner through digital and in-person gatherings. So without further ado, Casey, you there?
You bet.
Awesome. So we go ahead and jump right into it. I know we started a couple minutes late, so I want to be sure we can give you the floor so you can explain to us kind of the strategies that you have in mind going forward and different routes people can go with their real estate investing.
Absolutely. Thanks, Zach. And I really appreciate Quest IRA inviting me on. It's a really cool group to talk to, and I'm really excited to share this strategy with you, or share multiple strategies with you guys today. At the end, I want to kind of set the ground rules of what I hope you guys get out of this, because ultimately, if you guys invest the time in here, I hope it brings you value. But probably the biggest thing is I want you guys to understand these three, because these are three very different strategies in real estate, from fixing and flipping to turnkey, buying to private money lending. Again, three very different strategies, but I hope I give you guys enough information to be dangerous. Some of you guys might have a background and already understand one of these or all of these, but I'm hoping you guys learn a little bit today. And then I'm going to give you, probably the best part is I'm going to give you, two things. I'm going to be able to give you guys some hard lessons that I've learned the hard way, or lessons that other people have taught me. So I'm hoping to give you guys that so you can not make some of those mistakes. And the last thing is, at the very end, I've got a really exciting kind of give for you guys that I'm going to hope that really helps you guys maybe take the next step in going and executing one of these strategies. So definitely stay tuned for their very end, and we'll get into that. But with that, let's get started. So just thank you for the introduction. I don't have to go too deep here, but I definitely wanted to dive into kind of what makes us unique and why I'm so passionate about real estate. So a lot of people like zone in on like what, and I don't think this is a bad thing at all, but a lot of people focus on like one specific part of real estate. Maybe it's wholesaling, maybe it's fix and flipping, maybe it's buying rentals, maybe it's multifamily, lots of different opportunities. Well, the approach we've taken, and it's really because of the markets we're in Wyoming and Montana. It's a very small market. There's 500,000 people in the entire state of Wyoming, and Montana's bigger than that, but still very small rural parts of the country. But for us to really scale and grow our company and achieve our goals, we've really built, as I mentioned at the beginning, we built an integrated real estate company where we go direct to seller, and this is kind of our Wow Houses company here. You can see the little Wow House logo. That's the company that goes direct to seller, generates all of our deal flow and our off-market deals, which some of those will wholesale, some of those will fix and flip, which kind of leads into kind of our second kind of pillar of our company, and that's our fix and flip company. We actually have brought construction in-house, again, due to it being a smaller market. It's harder to find contractors, and I spent years of trying to find good ones and working with general contractors or subs, and I did it all, right? But what we've landed on is having our own in-house contractors, and it's been a true game changer for us to be able to really control the fix and flip process. And also getting to the last piece is property management. It's really helped us to where we can actually have dependable contractors for our property management. And that's the last piece is we've just brought property management in-house. This is actually probably my longest running company. Is I've been managing our properties, our 150 units, the portfolio I currently own. We manage all of that in-house, actually with virtual assistants, believe it or not. Those virtual assistants are able to work with our boots on the ground contractors and other real estate agents we work with to where we can do that all in-house. So I've been really excited to build up that integration to where, again, we can control the deal from finding the deal to fixing it up to managing it. So that's a little bit about my background. The last piece, I've got a little logo of Shell here. Actually worked in corporate America, probably like a lot of you guys today. I started in 2012 with Shell and moved to Houston, Texas. And then I kind of moved all around, spent a lot of time working in the field. But that gave me the ability to start to invest in real estate because I would work for 2 weeks out in the field, and then I have 2 weeks off. And that's what allowed me to build up these real estate companies. And about a year ago, I left that job because my real estate company obviously started to take more time, and it was a natural evolution. But I love working. I mean, one of the big points of today is working with people who have strong W-2 incomes and their retirements and all that. So let's kind of jump in. So talking about these three different strategies, right? They're all different ends of the spectrum. From the first one here is kind of the level of involvement, to the risk, to the reward of the return, and to the level of control you have. So talking about fix and flip, the level of involvement, that is the highest, most active level of involvement if you want to be involved, right? If you want to fix and flip. The risk is also highest risk. Reward, also highest reward. Level of control is also the highest, right? Because this fix and flip, it's really on you to take care of it and do it all. And then we're going to go into we're going to get pretty deep on fix and flip today. Second one is turnkey investing. This one is really going to be in the middle of all these. It's kind of like the happy medium of all these, from involvement to risk, reward, and level of control, because you're right in the middle. And then the third one is private money investing, being a lender or a limited partner. Now you're going to get to the very bottom of all these. It's going to be the most passive. It's the risk. It depends on the deal, on the risk part, but typically it's going to be lower risk, definitely lower risk than doing a fix and flip yourself. The reward return, typically that actually is going to range as well. And the level of control, that one is definitely going to be on the lower end of the spectrum. Again, depending on the partnership, or maybe you're a limited partner that has voting rights, but typically you're going to be on the lower end of level of control. But it's important to understand these kind of where you fall in the spectrum and ultimately where you want to be. And I meant to say that at the very beginning is I really want to give people an overview of each one of these, and then you can really figure out which one fits for you, or maybe you want to work on multiple, doing parts of each one of them. So that brings me to this kind of the avatars, right? Who tends to succeed in these type of investments? So I'm going to go through the avatars, and I want to kind of go through how much money you maybe should expect to spend in each one of them, and then some kind of tips. So talking about the avatars, fix and flippers. So this typically is great if you have a contracting background, or you are a contractor, or you have a good network of contractors. Obviously, that is a key to fixing and flipping. This often full-time real estate investors are fixing and flipping, right? So this is, again, we said it's very active. Or if you're a side hustler, I think there's a lot of people out there that want to go do a fix and flip. There's a lot of rewards to fixing and flipping aside from just the money. It's just a really cool process to transform a house. But there's a lot of people that do this as a side hustle, but it is very involved. Let's see. Let's look at the avatar for turnkey investors. So this is great. I talked about this again. Great for high W-2 earners, because they're able to go buy a property turnkey and not have to do the fixing and flipping, not have to manage the property, not have to go place tenants, not have to actually go even find the deal. They can actually just go have, like, basically call them aggregators, bring the deals to them. This is great for business owners as well. They might have a lot of income coming in from their business. And also good for new investors. I really, really recommend turnkey if you're just wanting to buy your first deal. I would not recommend doing a fix and flip. That's very risky. But doing a turnkey investment as your first deal is a great way to get into it, because a lot of these things, a lot of the difficult parts are going to be actually managed and handled for you. The last thing is being a private money lender. So that avatar, again, it's going to actually cross over into what I just talked about as far as high W-2 earners, business owners, new investors. All those people are great private money lenders as well. But the other keys are having access to capital. That's obviously going to be a non-negotiable part of that. And then asset holders. If you have assets in the market that you can collateralize, which actually I'm going to talk about that right now. This tip here at the bottom, this is something a lot of people don't know about. And obviously a lot of people today are talking or might have investments in their 401k, and they're going to use that money to invest. But another thing people may not know about is you can actually use the money you have in the market and go borrow against that. And then the cool thing is you keep your money in the market, in your stock portfolio, whatever that might be. And then you can borrow against that and go reinvest it. And if you can, at that point, you're betting on the spread, right? If you can borrow it at maybe today you're borrowing 7-8%, but then you can go make 12% or more, then you're just making that spread. And then you get exposure to real estate and you keep your money in the markets. So that's a really cool tip if you didn't know that. Suggested liquidity. Let's get into that. So fix and flip. Again, this is where you're going to need the most money. I would not recommend doing a fix and flip. I mean, this is market specific. I mean, if you're flipping a house in California, you're going to need way more than 100K, but there are markets that you can get away with this for 100,000. The turnkey investors, that typically is going to require it. Again, I'm going to keep coming to that because this turnkey is always the happy medium. It's going to be about $50,000 that I would recommend having ready to be a turnkey investor. And that $50,000 is often going to go to a down payment. So let's say you're putting 20% down, that would allow you to buy a $250,000 house and put $50K down. You can obviously find cheaper houses or much more expensive assets. And then private money, the beauty of this is any amount. This could be really high, and this could be as low as like $10,000. And I've seen even lower than that at times. But again, this one is probably going to be one of the best ones for 401k, people who have self-directed IRAs, because they could do any amount. Because you might be starting out your self-directed IRA and don't have a ton of money in it. That's actually a question I get very commonly, is say, hey, well, I haven't really built up my Roth IRA or my self-directed IRA yet. Like, how do I get into real estate? I can't go buy a house with 10,000. Well, you could go be a private money lender. Could be a great option. And then some tips. So typically the best people for fix and flips are experienced in the trades in the background, right? I talked about that earlier. If you have experience in construction or understand it, it's going to help you a ton. If you're being a turnkey, having strong credit, because again, I recommend turnkey investors are people who go and actually use financing to buy a property turnkey, and then they're going to make the cash flow and get all the other benefits of being a real estate owner. So having good credit helps you a ton. And then kind of another tip on this private money lenders is it's relief from the stock market volatility. I find that a lot of the private money lenders that we work with, they either A, want to diversify, or B, they just want to get away from the volatility of the stock market, and they love the stability that real estate gives. And being a private money lender, and especially when you're doing debt, and we'll talk about debt and equity later, but when you do debt, it's more of a fixed return that you can count on, and it's backed by real estate. Okay, we'll keep moving along here. So this is a very detailed slide. I'm not going to go through all of this, but this is another one where, again, I could go for an hour just telling you war stories and lessons that I've learned the hard way being a fix and flipper. And we've talked a little about this already, but going and doing a fix and flip on your first deal is not something I recommend. But as you get into it, or maybe you work with somebody, maybe you partner with somebody on a fix and flip on the first deal, that would be a great idea. But some things to really watch out for. I'm going to focus more of my time for the second time on what to watch out for. And it's buying a bad deal. So when you're doing a fix and flip, they always say you make your money when you buy. So buying the right deal is going to be crucial. And finding, whether you're working with an agent or a wholesaler or somebody else to help you find the deal, is very important. Managing contractors. There's a lot of risk in this. I often say this is the biggest risk. And honestly, I think it's one of the biggest risks in real estate is managing contractors. I've seen more times, more than probably any other cause of like real estate deals going wrong. And it's when it's because of, and it's not, and I'm not saying it's always the contractor's fault, but just not being able to manage the contractors, estimate. That's the biggest variable that you can't always control. So being able to manage them is crucial. Not having enough liquidity. I've seen this and learned this lesson too at times. Like if you get in the middle of a flip and you run out of cash, or all of a sudden you go way over budget by $30,000, if you don't have that cash, you could get in a big bind where you potentially lose the asset or lose all the value that you created. So having enough liquidity is crucial when you're flipping. Seasonality, again, ask me how I know. This is another one I've learned the hard way, is knowing the market. Especially in our market, things slow down. Like literally buyers just drop off a cliff in like September, October. So you don't want to be flipping a house and have it hit the market on August 1st because you got like 30 days to sell it, or heaven forbid you hit September, October, or December when there's just not as many buyers out. So timing your flip is very important. And corrections in the market, we've seen that. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that over the last 2 years with rates. And then the other things that I keep going back to this, but a lot of these lessons are learned the hard way, is dealing with the city and permits. Sometimes if you got to understand where you're flipping the house and what the permits required and what the process looks like to get a permit approved, because often that can cause your project to go way over timeline, which ultimately costs you more money. And just, it's an unforeseen thing that a lot of people don't see. And last thing is holding costs, which kind of parlays into the permit part, is your holding time. If your holding time goes way over, it can really eat into your profit. So anyway, there's a lot more here on keys to success, but I did want to give you guys this one. This is a $100,000 tip that this will save you. If you're thinking about fixing flipping, please listen to this. It is always have 2 exit strategies. And the 2 that I would recommend is, obviously the first one when you're flipping a house is you want to be able to buy it, sell it, and make a profit, right? But what happens if the market corrects? Or what happens if one of these things that I just listed happened to you? Well, if you've underwritten that deal to where you can keep that property as a rental, it can save you. And it saves so many people over the years to where ultimately, let's say that you go way over budget. Or a better example is, let's say that you hit the seasonality and you can't sell the house. Well, if you've bought a house that will cash flow as a rental property, you don't have to sell it. But on the flip side, if you're buying a flip and the only way that you can get out of that deal is to sell it and flip it, that you can get like that the only option you have at that point is cutting the price and losing money. So one of the biggest lessons we learned this like 5 years ago, that don't ever try to flip something that you can't hold as a rental, because it's always a good ace in the hole that you can keep. I'll keep this as a rental and I'll sell it when the market comes back. A couple of case studies here. This is one we did in Sheridan, Wyoming. And again, I'm just showing you guys these case studies to show you examples of like how to underwrite and what to look for in a fix and flip. If you guys have done this, you're probably used to it, but it'll give you a good feel for it. So this was, as I mentioned, in Sheridan. We bought this house for $250,000. Our rehab budget was $63,000, and our holding cost was $9,000, and sale price was $360,000. So at the end of the day, we made $24,750 was our profit on this deal. We typically shoot for higher than that. And actually, I want to kind of show you the evolution of getting better as a fix and flipper. Like if you do a fix and flip and you're profitable on your first deal, you should be thankful. Like that's a win for sure. Because especially when you're using new contractors, it can be difficult to budget and know what to expect. So this was actually our first flip with our new set of contractors in Sheridan. And again, it took us 6 months. It took us longer than we expected. Profit was a lot less, but at the end of the day, we got it done. I want to show you a second one is we evolved as a company, and this was the same crew. This one, purchase price $305,000. We put $30,000 into it. So this rehab was a little less involved. It was more cosmetic. When I say cosmetic, I typically mean like we painted all the walls, painted exterior, did new flooring, new kitchen, new bathrooms. So that's like a little bit more than cosmetic, but it was a lighter flip. And then I got our holding costs, which you always got to pay. Don't forget your holding costs when you're doing a flip, because that's a big part of your factor, especially if it takes you longer than you expect. So we sold this house for $395,000. Profit was $41,200, and we did that in about 3 months. So you can see a little bit better than the first one. Now the third one, this crew, was in Cody, Wyoming. So this one was even more profitable. So we got this house again. We got it at a great discount, but the reason why we got it at such a great discount was this rehab. What kind of separates us is we take really big projects on that a lot of people won't touch. I mean, I'll be very transparent with you guys, especially depending on your market. If you're just looking at an under $30,000 rehab budget, those houses are very competitive. Like a lot of people are comfortable to go in and do paint and flooring, but not a lot of people are comfortable to go in and do foundation work, replace a roof, replace HVAC, redo electrical, which are pretty much all things we did on this house. But at the end of the day, we were rewarded for that. And we were able to sell this house for $500,000. So this was about an $85,000 of profit, and took us 5 months. But again, another cool thing about this, I won't go too deep, is we actually bought this on creative finance terms. So we actually took the seller's mortgage over on this $200,000. We actually seller financed that because we took over their loan. We fixed up the house, and when it was all done, we paid off their loan and we paid off our rehab budget. And it was a great way to structure this deal. I could do a whole other presentation on creative finance, which is one of my favorite things, but and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But anyway, it's definitely, I think it's a game changer right now with rates and using creative finance. Okay, guys, now let's kind of segue to the next one. Let's talk about turnkey investing. So I've talked a lot about this kind of being in the middle sweet spot, a great way for you to start out with not too risky, not too much time involvement, but also you get a little bit more control, and it's a great, and you don't have to have maybe quite as much capital as you do doing a fix and flip. So the beauty of this kind of shows you the evolution of what it takes to do turnkey, because it's very simple and very streamlined. Ultimately, you need to figure out where do you want to invest, right? Is what market are you interested in? The beauty of turnkey is you can invest anywhere in the country. The not so beauty of a flip is I would not recommend doing a flip anywhere in the country. I would recommend doing that where you can watch it, especially on the first one. We actually, right now, I'm here in Houston, Texas today. And I told you guys, all those properties are up in Wyoming and Montana, and we're able to do that. But that's taken me years to build out contractors and teams to be able to do that. But the beauty of turnkey is you can do it anywhere. The next step is getting your financing, right? So go talk to a bank, understand, hey, how much can I afford? What does my down payment look like? All those different things. Then you got to find a provider, right? So for example, we provide turnkey options for people in Wyoming and Montana where they can find the house and we do the rest. But there's turnkey providers across the country, and I'd recommend I'd be happy to make any referrals to you guys depending on what market you're interested in. At that point, yeah, you're going to just kind of start looking for properties, right? You're going to look for your property, put it under contract. I'm going to kind of move quick here, go through the inspections, typically do appraisal, and then you close. And then here's probably the best part. Turnkey investing is why I love it so much is you as the investor, you get to walk into cash flow on day one. So when I buy a property, I have to go put a bunch of money up front. I spend 3 to 6 months fixing it up. And then after 3 to 6 months, then I go put my tenant in there. And until I find my tenant, that whole process might take me 3, 6, 9, 12 months before I receive any money on that property. The beauty of Turnkey is you get to go buy the property when all that has already happened. Me or whoever the one finding the deal has already found the deal. They fixed it up and they found a tenant and it's making cash flow and then they sell it to you. So really good way, as we talked about, to get started and get into the game. I want to show you guys a couple of case studies. And then I got a really cool tip on these case studies of how you guys can leverage your self-directed IRAs because there are rules when it comes to lending. So these deals, I'm just giving you, these are 3 ones. This is actually properties we're actually have available right now for turnkey buyers. So this one's in Casper, this is in Billings, Montana, and this is also the one's in Casper. So without diving into the numbers of every single one, I'll just kind of walk you through the underwriting. So ultimately, you want to look at how much are they renting for. So you start with your rent. These are the total expenses. This is your mortgage, your taxes, insurance. You always want to make sure you account for repairs and maintenance and vacancy. So this kind of factors in all those factors, estimated at $1,375 a month. I'm going to come back to this loan rate. This is the loan rate that we're actually assuming, which is probably the coolest part about these deals, but I'll come back to there. The down payment. This is a $50,000 down payment to get into this property. So that cash on cash return, which is simply taking all the income coming in minus the expenses, and dividing it by your amount of cash put into it. It's almost a 20% cash on cash return, which is really solid. And a big part of that is because of the financing in place. The price. So this is a total purchase price. This is a value, and this is actually the equity you're walking into. I want to be realistic with people. Don't always expect to get great cash on cash and built-in equity as a turnkey buyer, because ultimately, if you're getting both, like, that's phenomenal. But it's just, unless you're finding the deal and going out and doing the repairs and finding and doing the tenant, it's hard to make the numbers work and to get both of these. In this deal, you're actually getting both. Anyway, and I already talked about the cash on cash return. So I want to talk about this tip now and to kind of really level this up for you guys and buy turnkey. So if you could do sub 2 or seller finance, let's back up a little bit here. So again, talk to a self-directed IRA professional on this and make sure that it works for you. But if you're using your self-directed money to purchase a property, you are not actually able to go out and take debt with that self-directed IRA. You can't actually you can take debt, but it cannot be secured. And if you guys didn't know this already, there are not a whole lot of banks out there that will go do a loan that is not secured, that is not personally guaranteed. So it's really hard to get a loan that is not personally guaranteed. Well, the great workaround and what is common is if you can buy a property subject to. So this is how you would do it, is you would go buy one of these properties, because again, the mortgage is in the original seller's name. So you go and buy this property at 252 Jefferson. You take over their mortgage payment that is guaranteed by the original seller, and then you can actually take that down with your self-directed IRA, and then then you're able to use leverage, which I'm not going to get into leverage today, but leverage is one of the best ways in real estate to grow and use somebody else's money, which is typically the bank, to grow your portfolio. But if you're tracking with me, guys, essentially, if you were to go try to get a bank loan with your self-directed IRA and that you personally had to guarantee, which again is 95% of loans you got to personally guarantee, and then you were to buy the property and put like 25% down and finance 75%, that won't always work with the self-directed IRA because it's personally guaranteed. But the workaround is you go and buy a house subject to, again, where the original seller has a personal guarantee. Or I don't think it's on this list, but I have another property I've done where if you negotiate with the seller and they own the property free and clear and they seller finance it to you, that's another great way to kind of get around this. Again, I'd love to get deeper if somebody's interested on this on a call afterward, and I'll kind of talk to you guys about that later. but I wanted to kind of touch on that because it's a really, really cool strategy that not a lot of people understand. Okay, let's talk about the private money lending benefits. Again, busy slide. You guys can take a screenshot if you really want to dive deep into it, but I want to kind of talk more about private money lending. It's ultimately, well, here's a better kind of look at this. So private money lending is, there's typically, I like to divide it up into two separate things. So we have your debt. If you're going to be a private money lender, you're either going to do debt or you're going to do equity. So let's kind of talk about debt or lending first. So typically, if you're doing debt, you're going to be secured, right? You want, or well, I would recommend it. There are some situations where you could do unsecured, but typically you want to be secured. The way you're secured with the debt is through a first position lien or a second position lien. So again, tip here. Hold on, let me make sure. I'm going to get to kind of some tips in a second to like risk mitigation and how you guys should underwrite these deals. But first off, I wanted to highlight secured, first position, second position. Second thing is limited partners, right? Now let's get into the equity. So we talked about debt. Let's talk about equity as a private money lender. Typically, you guys, if you ever invested in a syndication, you know what this is all about. Or if you invested in a fund, this will make more sense to you guys. I've actually got a template over here, or an example of our fund and kind of the way we've set up our LP. So for example, in our fund, our limited partners get a 10% pref on the first. So basically the first 10% goes to the limited partner. After that, they have what's called a waterfall. So from 10 to 20%. So what that means is the cash flow, the distributable cash flow from the investment from 10 to after the, okay, think about this in stages. The first 10% all goes to the limited partner. From 10 to 20%, it's actually an 80-20 split to where myself, I'm the general partner. I get 20% of this, and then the 80%, it goes to the limited partner. The next threshold is at 20%. After we deliver a 20% return to the limited partner, then myself as a GP, I get 40% of every dollar after that, and they get 60. So that's the way we've structured our waterfall. It's always important if you're looking at a deal like this, understand the IRR. For example, this is our deal IRR, 23.7%. So what that means, this is the best way to really compare apples to apples. Because if you invest in a fund, again, this might be, if you guys have done this before, this will make sense. But if you haven't, it's a little bit complicated. When you invest in a fund, typically you're buying, and at least a real estate fund, you're buying a property that might be having cash flow each year. So there's going to be some cash flow that comes in year 1, year 2, year 3. But say it's a 5-year fund. At the end of that 5 years, you go and you sell the asset. At that point, a bunch of money comes in because you've been paying down the mortgage. You probably have you maybe have bought the property at a discount from the start. You also have appreciation, and maybe you did some forced appreciation by fixing up the property. But there's this big chunk of money that comes at the end, but it doesn't come in evenly distributed because you've got these little chunks along the way, and at the end, this big chunk. So the way to actually look at that investment as a whole is this IRR calculation. So that looks at it as in, hey, if I want to get the number today of how much I would make year over year for the next 5 years and basically split it up into 5 years, it'd be 23.7. So I like to compare this to your cash on cash return. As I talked about in one of my previous slides, this is the cash on cash return you're getting in a turnkey deal, right? Because you're getting that each year. This is purely based on the cash flow. In this situation, kind of compare apples to apples, you're getting 23% on an IRR. So if you're looking to be a limited partner, the big things I would look at is this. The other thing you could look at is your multiple. That's simply how much money, if I invest 100,000, for example, and in 5 years, I'm going to multiply my 100,000 by 2.76. And a lot of people like to look at that to kind of understand if the deal is right for them. You can also just be a simple, I put this note down here. You can also just do a simple partnership, which could be 50-50. It could be whatever you want, but you can always go partner with, which is something we do often. We'll go partner with somebody who has the capital, and I'm going to show you an example here in a second of when we've done that. And you can partner with them, and then you get equity. And ultimately, this partnership is a much simpler way, but it's typically done by 1 or 2 or 3, a small amount of people, right? But a fund involves multiple people. All right, I want to go into kind of some best practices, especially when it comes to risk mitigation in your lending private money. So we talked about the security, and I was wanting to get into this a second ago, but had to hold myself back. So typically the documents that help secure you and make this such a good investment is what's called a promissory note which the promissory note is a simple, typically I've got a template here right now of one we use, but it's simply just typically a one pager that lists, hey, what is the interest rate? When should I be paid back? What happens if I'm not paid back? When are payments due? All the different terms are typically written into a promissory note. The second thing is, depending on your state, in Wyoming, we have a mortgage, and other states have a deed of trust, but this will be the document that is filed at the county. So this is what protects you from ultimately that house being sold. Like literally, there's no way for the current owner to sell this property without paying off that mortgage. It's just like if you go to buy a house and there's a bank involved, they record a mortgage. And then when you go to sell that property, you get a payoff. And that way you pay off your mortgage first. So this is the instrument that secures you. This is the instrument in the promissory note that explains all the different terms. What I did want to talk about is first versus second lien positions. So this is one I found. I talked to a lot of private money lenders, right? But I find that a lot of them, they only do first position. What we actually do is more second position, or one of the big drivers on our side is because we're able to make the deals work, because we want to borrow from a bank, or maybe we take a loan subject to at 2 or 3 or 4%. And then we want to combine that with maybe a private money lender who are paying 12%. And when we blend that all together, that helps make the deal make sense for us. But what's important when you're a lender on these and you're in second position is you just got to understand the asset, right? So I'll give you this caveat. A lot of people don't want to do first position because ultimately they don't get paid first, right? If the house got foreclosed on or something happened, that first lender gets paid first, and then you get whatever's left over. Here's the way you mitigate that is you go and you underwrite. If you're going to be a second position lender on a deal, you need to understand the ARV, which actually I'm going to wait on this because I've got a good slide to kind of explain this to you guys on how you can protect yourselves in second position. But the point I wanted to make is sometimes second position on a existing asset that's already cash flowing could be a safer bet, because when you're doing a fix and flip, I talked to you guys earlier about fix and flips and all the risk, right? There's a lot that can happen on a fix and flip. And you're working typically off an ARV, which is the end value of the property. But if you never finish the project, or you have issues with contractors and you never get to that value, like that's where there can be some risk. As opposed to being a second position on a existing asset that's already cash flowing, there to me, and talking to getting feedback from a lot of lenders I work with, they feel like that's less risky, because they know, hey, I know Casey, literally this is what a lender told me once. He goes, Casey, I feel comfortable with this because I see the cash flow you make on this property, and I know how important that asset is to you. And I know you're not going to ever give it up, because ultimately if something were to happen to me, he would be able to, he would have to work it out with a first position loan, but he would take over that property that has all this good cash flow. And again, it's all about the asset and knowing kind of the risk reward. We could dive deeper into that another time, but it's just, I wanted to stress that don't only look at first position. If you're thinking about being a private money lender and you want to do debt, and we're just talking about debt here, I would not just pigeonhole yourself to only do first position. I would look at first and second. A couple other things to kind of protect you is getting a lender's insurance policy. I can tell you this, if you guys are working with Quest IRA or any other IRA company, they're going to do a good job of making sure you have all these documents in place. But one of the other things is just getting a lender insurance policy. That just protects you if there's any issues with the title down the road. I'm going to talk about this loan to value thing, because this is a very, very important thing to keep you out of trouble if you're know if you're lending on a good deal or not. But the other things are cash flow and income, which again, I'm going to show you how to underwrite that. But the last thing is confidence in the operator, right? They always say you're not betting on the jockey, you're betting on the horse, right? Sorry, you're not betting on the horse, you're betting on the jockey. So you're really betting on the guy who's like, okay, so for example, when people invest with us, they're more so, they know my background, they know our track record, they're betting on me, right? When you go to invest, it is very important that you know who you're investing in and not just the deal, right? So understand the operator and understand their knowledge, understand their experience is very important. If you can combine knowing how to underwrite the deal and make sure it's a good deal, and you have a great operator that you know and trust, and you've checked the references and you've done your due diligence, that is the best. That's the holy grail, best way to really understand if you're going to be in a good position and when you go to lend your money. So let me show you a couple of case studies, and I can kind of show you guys, and this will kind of explain the underwriting and how you guys can underwrite deals. So this is the deal we did. This is actually the one I showed you guys earlier up in Sheridan, Wyoming. The total investment on this in second position was 96,250. So we paid 12% to our investor. What we actually did was we went to a small bank on this one, and they lent us, I think, the first 200,000, for example, at, I don't know, maybe it was like 7% at the time. And then we went and borrowed from a private money lender the remaining 96. So that helped us go buy this house, pay for the rehab, and then when we were all done, we paid the investor back. They basically made $28.87, and it was just in 3 months. So because typically we do a 12% ROI. So that's just one example of one of ours. But let me show you guys some of our current pipeline, and I want to talk about kind of the underwriting in a little bit and the LTVs. So this is one we have in Evanston, Wyoming. It's a little bit of a lesser investment amount. One thing I did talk about earlier was private money lenders. They have a lot of flexibility in the amount of money they can lend, right? So for example, what we have in our pipeline, I've got one deal where somebody could invest 35,000, one where they could do 50, one where they could do 120, right? You might not, if you're trying to fix and flip or you're trying to be a turnkey buyer, it might be difficult to go find an investment at 35,000, but being a private money lender allows you to be flexible. So that's why I wanted to kind of show these different type of deals. But the thing I want to highlight is this LTV. So you need to look at when you're underwriting a deal, you need to look at, and the way this is calculated is think about how much money is in first position and how much money is in second position, and then the total value of the house. So let me give you this deal. For example, I don't have this all broken out here. Hold on, let me go back. So on this grub stake deal, we're bringing in 120,000 of private money, but the current loan in place, I don't have it written here, but the current loan in place is 180,000. So if you add 180 plus 120, that's 300,000. Well, the sale price on this thing, I don't have it here, but it's 400. It's like we're going to list this thing around 450. So if you do the math on that, 120 plus 180 and divide it by like 430, I think is our ARV. That's where I come up with this LTV. So what we try to target is an LTV under 70%. What that means is if we had to fire sell this or do something, or maybe we go way over budget, or all those bad things I showed you about that can happen on a flip, if those things happen, we've got 30% cushion where we could still sell this house and be fine. So I think it's really important you look at this, and especially if you're looking at being a second position lender, you're not first, you're in second position. If you add the first position loan plus your second position, if you're still under 70%, I think you're still in a very safe spot, at least based on my kind of risk appetite, right? I've even seen lenders go up to 80 or 90% on an existing rental that's cash flowing. Again, I would not recommend that on a fix and flip because, again, all the things we talked about earlier, I would fix and flip. I would try to stay under 70%. But if it's an existing asset it's already stabilized, it doesn't need a bunch of repairs, the value is already there, and it's making money each month, then I think you could go to 80 or 90%. And the last thing to kind of put this to bed on the kind of knowing what deals to lend on would be the cash flow of the property. You want to look at how much cash flow is coming from this rental property or whatever it is that you're in second position. So if you look at I'm going to go back and show you a better example of this. So if we're looking at this one, right? So let's say that the rent is this much, the expenses are this much. There's a big delta here of the cash flow. So you want to make sure, like, for example, here, that's like almost $1,400. So that $1,400 would support a second position loan, right? Because there's a lot of excess cash flow that can pay off the loan. So at the end of the day, you just want to make sure that there's enough money generated by the property to pay not only the first position loan, all the expenses, and the second position loan. But if you could do all of that, that's a great way to lend in second position on existing rental properties. All right, I want to make sure we have some time for questions, but I did want to talk about this last deal. This was a really cool multifamily deal that we did. And all right, I'm going to take one pause to kind of explain about our company. One of our big mission is, we call it's like civic. So we want to create value and improve communities. And this project is a really good example of that. And the reason I'm saying this is I want to explain how multiple people benefited from this deal. So we actually combined debt and equity on this. So the investment amount, I had several different investors come in with $50,000, and we did a 12% return to them, and the duration is 18 months. I actually secured these investors with the exact strategy I just got done talking to you guys about, where I had rental properties that had some equity, and then they had good cash flow. So my lenders came in and lended based off of those properties. So the mortgage and the promissory note is based off of that asset. So if something bad happens on this one, they're not impacted. They're actually secured with a different property. And that allowed me to go borrow and get money at 12% and give these investors a 12% return backed by real estate, right? So the second piece of this deal was the equity portion. So I talked about like being 50-50. I actually have a 50-50 partner on these 63 units. Talking about the deal really quick, I'll pause and kind of go into the deal. We bought this in 2023. The purchase price was $3.2 million. And this was about the amount of equity. The amount of equity needed to buy it was $1 million. We financed the rest with a small bank. This was actually a really good deal we put together because we were able to use a small bank to fund this loan. And they're actually funding the purchase plus the rehab. And we put about $1 million down of equity. We actually got this at like the terms at like 7% interest rate. It's interest only for 12 months. I'm kind of diving into this, but because it's really exciting to put bigger deals like this together. But our ARV on this property is 4.5 to 6 million, which I'm going to show you in a second. And the estimated rehab was 585,000. Again, these are a bunch of 2-bedroom, 1-bath units in Casper, Wyoming. So kind of circling back to how we set up this deal was me and my partner each put in 500,000 of this $1 million in equity investment. So our strategy on this deal is once we fix all these units up, we're going to refinance this building, be able to pull out our cash, and then we will own the asset without any cash in the deal. So at that point, myself and my investors' return will be infinite. And what I'm going to do is at that point, I'm going to go back and pay off the debt that I raised to go buy the property. So if you're following me, I raised my 500,000 with other properties and I secured it with other properties. And I basically said, hey, this is going to take us about 18 months to go and fix up this property. We'll get all of our money back. I'll pay you back your 50,000 plus 12%. So I was able to work with 4 or 5 different private money lenders here. And then my partner obviously is getting a ton of value because we're going to be able to go buy this one and fix. Well, let me actually give you guys the update. So this is really cool. And I actually put this together today based on how this project is going. So we recently had one of our units appraised in this building because there's actually a couple of private owners. There's actually a HOA with this building. But anyway, one of the units appraised for 90,000 just actually about a month ago. And this was actually in our building that needs the most work and is not even renovated yet, which is kind of crazy. But our current basis, meaning how much I bought the unit for plus my rehab, is 60 to 65,000 a door. And one just appraised right now. Again, I'm halfway through the project and it appraises that number. I think this number will go up. Actually, I feel very certain this number will go up. But just looking at that, if we just multiply the value created per unit times 72, it's $1.8 to $2.16 million of value created from this deal. So the reason I bring this up is it created value for my partner. It created value for our private money lenders, and it's creating value for the city of Casper. I won't go too deep into this. I keep saying that, but I think it's worthwhile. Is this property had a lot of drugs going through it, a lot of issues. I've talked to multiple people in the police department and they've thanked me and they've said, hey, you guys have really turned this place around and we're improving the community, right? We're taking an asset that was really a danger zone and we've been able to bring in good tenants, renovate it and bring value to the city. And then, like I said, bring all this value to all these other private money lenders and investors. Okay. Well, the last thing I wanted to give you guys. So hopefully I gave you guys a bunch of different things to watch out for. Enough to be dangerous, but I wanted to give you guys a couple more resources. So first thing is, if you guys see this QR code, and if you guys are watching this recording, hopefully you guys can see it there, or maybe it'll be in the show notes, but here's the QR code to my YouTube channel. If you want to, I've got deeper dives into fix and flipping, into private money lending, into turnkey buying, and all sorts of other different stuff. I encourage you guys, if you want to go deeper on a subject, go check out our channel and you can go deeper there. So that's kind of the first resource I would look at. The second resource is, again, depending on what kind of social media you like to ingest, would be you can go to this link. This link, I should have started there. This link is going to take you to my link tree and it's going to give you links to all these different things. But again, if you're on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, I encourage you guys to connect. I'd love to talk more with you guys. And just, we spend a lot of time and energy and resources into talking about our deals because being transparent with you guys, a lot of people have helped me out along the way, and they've shown me. I've had some incredible mentors that have helped me get to where I'm at. So I really enjoy giving back through our content and talking about, hey, how do we underwrite a deal? Hey, how do we do our fix and flip? How do we manage contractors? How do we use virtual assistants to run our property management company? All those different things are videos and things we'd love to share. So I encourage you guys to go there. And the last one before you go to Q&A, and I think is the best part, is I encourage anyone, if you're interested and want to just talk one-on-one, again, go to this link. You can book a 15-minute call with me. I mean, this goes for everyone. If my calendar gets full of appointments to talk about, hey, I want to do a fix and flip, or hey, I want to go buy a turnkey deal. Who should I talk to? Where should I look? Hey, I want to be a private money lender. Hey, I want to look into funds. Whatever it is, like, please book a call with me, guys. Again, people have poured into me and helped me, so I really enjoy doing the same thing. And the last thing I'll say on that is, I do seller calls. I do a lot of different stuff during the day as part of my running my real estate company. But by far, my favorite part is getting to connect with other investors and hear what they're working on and hear what their goals are. Because, obviously you can see the passion hopefully in me today and how much I enjoy real estate and how it's changed my life. So yeah, I love talking about it. So I really do encourage you guys to take me up on that and book a call. And in any way I can help you, please let me know. So at that point, I can turn it over to questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Casey. That was really informative for us. So we're going to turn it over to the questions, guys. Make sure you're throwing your questions in the chat. We've got a few here already. So first, let's start off with Susan just asking, could you define what a turnkey is? What is a turnkey property? Obviously, in the real estate space, there's a lot of different definitions. So, how do you see a turnkey property?
You bet. So I kind of explained the process of it, but to simply break it down much simpler is, I would say turnkey is you literally get to go buy the property. They call it turnkey because you're just going to go turn a key and you've got a property and it's all set up for you. Again, you don't have to work on finding an off-market deal, buying at a discount, finding contractors to fix things up, finding a tenant. Like, all that is done for you. You get to walk in and buy a property that's literally cash flowing with the tenant. And I should clarify that just in case you guys, based on experience level, I'm meaning that you're buying a property that already has a paying tenant in the property. And that's how you make cash flow day one, because the way you're going to look at that deal is you're going to make sure that the rent coming in is less than your debt service or all your expenses, right? And as long as the income's more than expenses, you make money day one. But again, you don't have to wait because it's turnkey. It's ready to go day one.
Awesome. So we have another question here coming from Derek Long. He says, would you recommend using a realtor, or do you save money by just dealing with the seller agent directly? This is something that I've struggled with as an investor.
Oh, that is a very, very good and a loaded question too. I do both. So again, why we built our company was we built a direct to seller company because I love being able to talk directly to sellers and negotiate and create a win-win between us. That could be very difficult when an agent is involved. But that said, we work with agents all the time. They always help us to find our deals. They help us list our flips. The other big thing is, I didn't even talk about this today, but we leverage agents. They're my boots on the ground. Like, the only way I'm able to invest across the state of Wyoming and in Montana is by having local agents in each market that understand intimately each market. And then they can go walk houses for us. They can help go give us a quick scope. They can take pictures, and they really help us keep out of trouble, right? Because we do marketing across the state, and we'll get a lead comes in and we get a motivated seller, and then I'll send out my agent to that house and say, hey, what do you think? What's the value in this house? What rehab is needed? So anyway, hopefully that answers your question. I would, if you can talk directly to a seller and negotiate without them, that's always easier. And I guess the last little tip that maybe Derek is getting at is, if I'm a buyer, yeah, I think there's no problem. And you want to buy something that's listed on the MLS, you reaching out directly to that agent, I think is a great idea. And that's how I first did it before I was doing marketing and finding my own deals, was just calling agents who have properties listed, especially properties that might be sitting on the market. It's a great list to go attack, is call that agent, talk to them. And there's other ways you can bring value, right? Because if you're not represented, then that could save that seller. It might save them, instead of paying 6%, it might save them 3%. So I would definitely encourage you, if you feel comfortable, reaching directly out to agents and representing yourself.
Awesome. So another question coming in from Fong Nguyen saying, How do you secure a promissory note that a borrower will pay back after selling a property?
How do you secure a promissory note that a borrower will pay back after
So I'm
selling the
guessing he's
property?
thinking like he owned it, he's seller financing it. That's my assumption.
Okay. Oh, and maybe he's talking about, well, just to understand, because maybe it was complicated where I've got a first position. Okay, so I think he's talking about these sub two deals. So if I buy a property subject to that loan, what I do is then I put that. So he's in first position, whether it's the seller, whether it's the guy who sold me the house and he seller financed it to me, or whether I'm taking over his loan that he has with another bank. But that always stays in first position, and then I go resecure behind that loan in second position by private money lender. And then when we're all done with the deal and we go to sell it, obviously first position bank and or seller gets paid. Second thing is the promissory note to the second position investor gets paid. So it all gets paid off at closing through the title company.
Awesome. And then this one's asking, can you use self-directed IRA for rentals and then keep the cash flow? So I'll go ahead and take this one. So whenever your IRA is the one purchasing the investment, remember that your IRA, while it's filled with your money, it is an entirely separate entity than you. So you wouldn't be able to purchase the property with your IRA and then have the cash flow coming back to you as an individual. All right, it's got to go directly back to the IRA. Now, by all means, if you want to take a distribution from your IRA, you can do so, but you want to be sure you're talking to a tax professional, because things like your age will factor in. You want to factor in your income, right? Because they could be a taxable event taking on that distribution. All right, so moving on to the next one, we have a question from Clint asking, it'd be awesome to hear Casey's outlook on the domestic real estate market in 2024. So kind of where do you see the market, the market going with, probably the drop in interest rates, and stuff like that?
Yeah, man, I love that question, Clint. Because this is the cool one for me to answer because I also do our acquisitions. I've got a team that finds the deal and basically puts me on appointments with people who are actually motivated, ready to sell. And I've been doing that for the last 3 or 4 years. But in the last 6 months, I would say since like October, I'm finally seeing more motivation from sellers to where, I mean, in the last, say, call it the last 5 years, they could just go list their house as is and they'd get multiple offers and the market was crazy, right? But that interest rates have slowed that down significantly. So now when we talk to sellers, they're much more motivated and they're willing. That's why I kind of talked about sub two and these creative finance strategies. That's why it's become much easier for us to do now because these sellers now they don't have as many options to just go liquidate their house. So they're willing to hear creative terms. So I think it's a great opportunity right now. And I'm seeing this window where we're finally seeing sellers that are motivated and they're willing to, ultimately you can find better deals. But I think it's a small window. And that's why, honestly, we're in this, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I love where we're at for the next 2 to 3 months. Because I really believe when interest rates drop this summer, there's all these people that have been sitting on the sideline and still want to buy a house, but they couldn't afford it because of interest rates. Like you're already seeing it as it starts to drop, right? And plus the seasonality, at least in our markets, and this happens across the country, in spring and summertime, a lot of buyers come back in. So what we're doing, we've actually doubled, almost tripled down on our marketing this in like Q1 of this year because we feel like, hey, if people are motivated now, let's go out and get deals under contract. And then that way we'll be selling and flipping these hopefully this summer and in the spring when the market heats up. So I think it's a really good window. They say you should never time the market, but I think it's a really good time now. But ultimately, I would get in any market, right? If it's a low market, you can buy deals great. If it's a high market, then you know what? It's real estate always keeps going up, right? And if it's a high market, it's probably because of low interest rates and you can get cheaper debt, right?
So speaking of, there are people talking about, well, as we go forward in 2024, they're seeing that, interest rates are going to drop. Obviously people were talking about it could have been earlier this year, but as we've gone on, it seems like they might be pushing that back. So how do you see the interest rate changes affecting things like private money lending, right, and your strategies going forward?
Yeah, good point. Yeah, it's oh man, it impacts in a lot of different ways. I don't have like a direct correlation, but when we've been borrowing from like we typically do like on our private money, like short-term stuff that's like 3 to 6 months, we're typically doing anywhere from 8 to 12% on that. That's obviously shifted a little bit. I mean, that made a lot more sense when interest rates were 2 to 3% and people couldn't go get 5% on their basically in a bond or in a money market account. But now that those have pushed up, I have seen that the private money rates have gone up. And there's also I mean, we're actually in a part of a mastermind in sub two with Pace Morby, and there's a lot of people that lend to they lend to other fix and flippers, and some of the rates that they charge, it's pretty wild. But again, those are high risk deals. But ultimately, I think that rates have probably come up a little bit when it comes to actually lending our deals, and that's why maybe we used to be at 8% and now maybe we're at 12, because again, people could put their money in a money market account at 5% or 6 or whatever it is. But as rates come back down, I think private money rates will come back down. I think really at the end of the day, I think there's opportunity in both parts of the market.
Awesome. Then final question from Clint asking, so on a more micro scale, is there a property that you're most excited about taking down this year for investors to take part of?
Ooh, yeah. So if you'd asked me this 12 months ago, I'd have told you that 63 unit one that I just did the underwriting for and showed you guys how it's almost gone full cycle. So that one we're excited. We should be done by that one by the end of the summer, but we actually found another creative finance one in Laramie, Wyoming. And we're actually going to take this down within our fund with limited partners. So if somebody is interested, I do encourage them to reach out. But basically, this is a collection of properties we have in Laramie, Wyoming. I didn't talk a whole lot about Laramie, but Laramie's where I bought my first property. It's where the University of Wyoming is, the only 4-year university in Wyoming. So a ton of demand, not enough supply. And actually, it's where it's really our home base. And we feel the most comfortable in this market. But anyway, we found this collection of this portfolio of properties that has some mobile homes. It's got opportunities to expand and add more mobile homes. It's got stick-built houses. There's just a ton of different opportunities. But we got it on creative finance terms. So I'm really excited. We're actually closing on that one here in the next week. And then we're going to be, like I said, we're going to be taking it down to the fund so we can bring in limited partners into that deal. So it's got cash flow. It's got long-term upside. And it's the best part maybe is creative finance. So anytime you get all three of those, it's a pretty exciting deal.
Absolutely. Well, Casey, thank you so much for coming out. We appreciate you sharing your insight when it comes to the different strategies that are at hand. Obviously, when people get into real estate, they kind of, I feel like when they first start, they thinking, okay, fix and flips are really, when they think of real estate investing, fix and flips are rentals, right? But you can get a lot more creative, when it comes to the different strategies. So I appreciate you coming out. So to close this out, we got a couple of things on our side. So make sure everybody understand everything you saw today was for educational purposes only, right? It's important to understand the role that Quest is going to play when it comes to your retirement investing. We're here to offer as many resources, as much education as we can, like classes like today, people like Casey coming out, sharing their insights, but we don't offer any sort of tax, legal, or investment advice, nor do we endorse any specific investments. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Casey. Casey, if you want to throw your information in the chat on how people can reach out to you, via email, or if you want to throw some links in there, by all means. If you have questions going over your IRA and you want to take a look at, hey, maybe I have some strategies I'm considering, I want to talk to an IRA specialist, by all means, scan the QR code there. We'll get you set up. It's a free consultation. You can ask as many questions as you'd like. We'd like to really be sure you're understanding all the next moves that you're making. Be sure to join us for our Path to Wealth for the Next Generation. So we're going to have millennial investors coming out, sharing their strategies. It's going to be Saturday, March 23rd from 12 to 3. We like to put on these events. Obviously, these are outside of our normal Saturdays and Tuesdays, just to share a bit more information when it comes to the different types of strategies that we're seeing throughout the different age ranges. Also, be sure to join us in May. We're going to be celebrating Military Appreciation Month. So we're going to talk about financial freedom strategies from veterans turned investors, and we'll be partnering with the Wounded Warrior Project for those socials. So it'll be May 2nd in Austin, May 7th in Houston, and then May 14th in Dallas. I'm really excited about that one. Also, be sure you're joining us for our Quest Expo. This is the biggest event that we host of the year. So we took a year off to be sure we're able to put the effort that we could to make sure we're offering the best value and the biggest event that we've ever held. We're super excited about it. It'll be in the Irving Convention Center in Las Colinas, Texas. And so that's going to be right, pretty much Dallas. It's really, I'd say it's like the west portion of Dallas metro area. But this is not just a self-directed IRA event. This is an overall alternative asset investing event. So we'll talk about different strategies. We'll have different speakers coming out from across the industry. You'll have opportunities for networking, opportunities to really learn all the different aspects of alternative investing that you might not have thought of. Obviously, some of them in an IRA, some of them outside of an IRA. So don't think of this as just a self-directed IRA event. This is an alternative asset event. This is really the best value that we can offer to our clients and investors. Scan the QR code there if you're interested, learn more about it, or if you want to register for the expo. And on that note, Casey, thank you again so much for coming out. I really do appreciate it. We really value insights like yours that can help people move and help build their wealth to where they want. Oh, you're muted, Casey.
Yeah, my pleasure. And like I said, if I'm hoping I just planted enough seeds for you guys today to give you enough to be dangerous. And like I said, if you want to dive deeper, check things out. But I encourage you guys to continue to educate yourself, because that's the best way that you can really get to the point where you can invest and do whatever your goal is. Educating yourself is always the most important. And I think Quest does an awesome job of doing that for everybody.
Thank you guys for joining us. You all have a good weekend.